Good morning, everyone. A report from 2022 found that the UK was the second largest electronic waste producer per capita in the world. When I first heard that statistic, I was absolutely shocked. Our products are so sophisticated, so technologically advanced, and we've got so much in the way of infrastructure. How can this possibly be the case? And I realised that we've become incredibly good at hiding from it. We buy our products, often quite cheaply, use them, and then throw them away, and never really think about what happens to them afterwards. And it's only really when we're confronted with something like this, which is a view that I got when I visited my local tip, that we can really see the effect. So many products, so many materials, and I was actually shocked to see that quite a lot of them actually look quite new. And it's not just the energy that went into producing these products in the first place that's lost, but also the energy that's gone into producing the shiny new products which presumably replaced them. I'm a product designer, so I design products. I work with manufacturers who make products, and I'm certainly a consumer who loves using products. So I feel responsible in some way for this. But my talk today is really to ask what we as consumers can do about this, and how we can change our relationship with our products to impact the decisions manufacturers and designers make and create products that are better, not just for the environment, but for us as well. And so after seeing that scene, I decided that I would try and make a change and change the relationship with my products. And the next product that broke on me, I wouldn't simply throw it away, but I would do something about it. And as it happened, my computer mouse stopped working. And so I sat at my desk, I watched all the necessary videos, I bought all the required tools, and I sat about trying to repair it. And 3 days later, I damaged my desk, injured myself, but I finally got the last few parts back together, ready to congratulate myself on this great triumph. And the mouse didn't work. And I was devastated, and I felt two things. Firstly, I was embarrassed as an engineer and designer that I hadn't been able to put this back together again. But mainly what I felt was frustration. Frustration that this product hadn't met my expectations. It had really let me down and hadn't delivered what I thought it should have done. And I realized that we've become so accustomed to these products letting us down, using them, breaking, and then replacing them, that we've not learned to expect more from them. And so I'd like to ask you today if we can shift our mindset and demand more from the products that we use, not just for the better of the environment, but also for our own personal experience. In some areas, we are already starting to change our behaviours. Second-hand clothes, for instance. I'm sure many of you here, and myself included, enjoy buying second-hand clothes and exploring the vintage market. And the data backs this up. The clothes resale market in the UK is expected to grow 48.9% between 2023 and 2027, which is great. But can we take this a step further? Not just buying second-hand, but actually looking after the products when we own them. And can we apply this to more of the products we use, not just clothes, but all sorts of consumer products? It might not always be feasible for some product types, but if we can expect more from the products we use and in turn pass this on to the manufacturers, I think it will really make an impact. And so I started exploring this with some of the other products that I use. This is a jacket that I own. And recently I was running quite late for a meeting in town, and I was running along the road, and I had a slight altercation with a lamppost, and I ripped the sleeve open, and slightly dazed, I emerged from an enormous cloud of feathers. So I scooped them back together again and stuffed them back in the jacket and sellotaped it shut. And when I got home, my initial reaction was, this coat's probably done for. But then I did a bit of Googling and found these patches for next to nothing, and I put them on, and to my surprise, they worked fantastically. The coat was as good as new, and actually better than that. I didn't see the coat as being damaged or, on its way out. I actually saw the patch as a sign of achievement, that I'd kept this product going. And the eagle-eyed amongst you might be able to tell there's not one patch, but actually 5 patches on this coat now from similarly embarrassing occurrences. I see this coat not as damaged, but actually being more valuable, certainly to me. These boots are actually the ones that I'm wearing now. I distinctly remember buying these because the advert said, great condition, slightly chewed. I investigated a bit further and found that they had in fact been chewed by a bored puppy. And I realized here that if I was able to look this slight imperfection that someone had deemed that was ruined that product, I was able to get something of high quality at much lower cost, which is great for me. The phrase goes, one man's trash is another man's treasure, and so it was for me. And I bought them fully with the expectation that I would take them home and repair them. But actually, I thought the bite marks were hilarious. And every time I look at the shoes, I think about this puppy and the frustrated owner absolutely devastated at what had happened. So I've kept them. And this is a watch that I own. I've never really been a watch wearer, as demonstrated by my experience with the jacket. I thought myself far too clumsy. But I saw this for 20 euros at a car boot sale in France and thought it was worth a punt. So I bought it, put a new battery in it, put a new strap on it, and wore it and loved it, until my clumsiness caught up with me and I fell over quite dramatically. And in a bit of a spot the difference here between the two, this is how I wore the watch for many months, with most of the hands fallen off and the hour hand bent, not really doing its job as a watch. But it was like this for several months because I tried and tried and tried to get it repaired. And time again, I was told, why? Why are you trying to repair this? You could just replace it. It'd be way cheaper. This watch isn't worth anything. And again, I realized we've become so used to that relationship of owning it, it breaking, and throwing it away and replacing it. And it's become so convenient to do so that we don't take the extra time to look after it and see if we can keep the product going. And eventually, to my delight, I found that someone was able to repair it, which was great. And I now see this product as having much more of a character. It's got a sense of resilience. It's somewhat of an underdog. It's battered and beaten and broken, but it's determined to keep going and in some form or another tell me the time. And I love it, again, because of that. And for each of these products, I realized that my relationship has subtly shifted. It's shifted from one of ownership to one of guardianship. I'm determined to keep these products going, and because of my involvement in them and that I've had an active role in keeping them going, I'm much, much more committed to them. And so I'd like to ask you all today here, if you're able to commit to a product you own, maybe it's something you've currently got on you, or maybe it's the next thing that you buy, can you make a commitment to look after it and keep it going, even when that's not necessarily the most convenient thing to do? But what about the role of the manufacturer and the designer? How do they fit into this? Well, I've worked with lots of companies developing products to market. And one thing I've learned is that companies shouldn't really be seen as being moral beings. That's not to suggest they're immoral, but rather they're much simpler than that. And they act on two main things. They act on regulation and consumer demand. They are desperate to meet existing government regulations and avoid paying fines, hopefully. And demand, they're keen to meet consumer demand and please and satisfy their customers. And these two things drive most decisions they make. And I confronted this when I was designing a new product. It was a medical product, and the existing product a company produced typically lasted around 2 years before it was broken and needed to be replaced. And we were considering redesigning this product. And I looked at the design and I thought, with a few tweaks here and there, we could probably make this product last 10 years, which I thought would be a great success. I was completely ready to be congratulated on this suggestion. But the manufacturer turned to me and said, Matt, if we do that and make it last 10 years rather than 2, we'll sell 5 times fewer products. And what he said was quite shocking, but actually incredibly honest. None of their consumers had complained that the product lasts 2 years. They'd become perfectly used to that and perfectly accepting of that as a normal experience of the product. And I realized that it was the consumer demand aspect of the puzzle that wasn't quite matching up. It wasn't so much a technical challenge. It's as easy to make something last a long time and be repairable as it is to make it cheap or easy to assemble in the first place. For a separate project, I ran a focus group and asked consumers what they might want from a new cosmetic product. And the things came up about it being cheap to buy, easy to use, look great, all the things you might expect. But not a single person said that they were expecting to have a product that lasted a long time or had a low environmental impact over its entire life. And that's not to say that any of the things I brought up weren't relevant or weren't suitable things to think about, but rather to say, when we don't hear it from consumers, it's very difficult to convince manufacturers that that's something that they should care about. And it's easy to see how the environmental impact of these products falls off the agenda when we as consumers aren't shouting about it and demanding it. Now, when regulation is in place, it's great and it does work. But sadly, as I stand here today, for most of the consumer products that we use, regulations concerning the environmental impact of the products simply don't exist. One difference this is in packaging. The next water bottle you buy, you might find it says 30% recycled material. Now, this isn't a coincidence. 30% is the minimum amount of recycled material that packaging must contain to avoid paying additional fines. So when it is in place, it does work. But when it's not in place, all that's left is the consumer demand side of the puzzle to force manufacturers to do something different. Now, in some product areas and some product types, we are starting to see a shift. In both the deodorant and toothbrush sectors, new products have been launched in the last few years that have really made a difference. These products are repairable, made from recycled materials, refillable, and in each case, they've set a new baseline. Consumers have now come to expect this as standard, and we now look back on some of the older products and say, why was that the case in the first place? And that's great, and we've made real progress there. So what can we do to make this happen more regularly across lots of the products we use? Well, I think, number one, our role as consumers is to speak up. I think we should really start to engage with our brands. It's something that we've lost through making easy online transactional purchases. We've lost some of that connection with our brands and manufacturers. So ask them questions. Ask them difficult questions. Is this really recyclable? What's this really made of? How long will this last? Will you repair it if it doesn't last? And we can do that also by leaving reviews, not just for other consumers, but to let manufacturers themselves know. If a product exceeds their expectations and lasts longer than you think it could have done, let them know that you were delighted by that. If it lets you down, as it did with my computer mouse, let them know that you're frustrated and your relationship with that product ended sooner than you hoped for. These things can seem like quite insignificant small actions, but collectively they can be incredibly powerful. And as a designer, I frequently read product reviews and use this to take to manufacturers to say, look, this is what people are saying, this is what they care about, let's do something about this. And secondly, I'd urge you to shift your relationship where possible to one of guardianship rather than ownership. Try to make a longer-term commitment to the products that you own and look after them. Maybe it's something you currently own, or maybe it's the next thing that you buy. And if it is the next thing that you buy, try to think really carefully before you purchase it. Is this something that I'm realistically going to be able to look after for the next 5, 10, maybe 15 years, maybe even longer? If it's something you're buying from a manufacturer, look and see if they're going to be able to support you in that process. And if not, considering buying it from someone who will. And if we are going to look after products for much longer, we're going to have to develop these deeper relationships with them. It might be as simple as giving the product a name. Our slightly old and battered van is a 12-year-old Mercedes Sprinter. And when we bought him, we realized he was called Usain, after another old Sprinter. And when we drove it away, we realized that the couple who sold it to us were in tears. And soon after, they texted us to say, how's he doing? They clearly built a really strong connection with this van and were really sad to see it go. Or it might be as simple as seeing a personality in your product. I put these googly eyes on my camera and realized it pulls a similarly surprised face as to when I managed to get a photo in focus. So take pride in its character, and sometimes that might mean embracing its flaws, embracing some slight imperfections and not always chasing absolute perfection and replacing it at the first sign of damage. Like I said, it's not always the most convenient thing to do, and given the wide range of cheap, convenient products we can purchase, it's always going to be tempting to simply replace products. But if we can commit to the products and look after them, it can be incredibly rewarding. It might mean that you learn a new skill, maybe you learn to sew. I've recently acquired a 1970s sewing machine, which I'm absolutely terrified of, but the experience is thrilling. Or it might mean that you get to know your local repair infrastructure. Maybe there's a local repair cafe, or you get to know a local repair technician, and that can be an incredibly rewarding experience too. In some cases, it might not be possible, and that's because products haven't been designed with these things in mind, and in which case, that's where it's up to us as consumers to voice our frustrations, demand more from the products we need, and let manufacturers know that we're not happy and force them to change how they approach new product design. Looking after our products and demanding more from them will not only reduce our impact on the environment, but will give us as consumers far richer and more enjoyable product experiences. Thank you very much.